Good morning. I'm Aaron. I'm the servant of God and the minister for the Church in Tennessee Ministries. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Whoever's out there watching, I hope you enjoy the message, and I hope you carry the message to all that may hear. When I say message, I'm not talking about as it necessarily comes from my mouth, but as it being the Word of God in truth and sincerity. Now, we've been on the subject of the church, and what's the best way to put it? That's the identity of the believers in Christ, and that's how we need to look at ourselves. We need to place a certain value on our lives. I think every human should know their value and their worth, and because when you do know your value and your worth, you start to walk according to that value and that worth, and you're less likely to be misused or to be disrespected, or at least accepted per se. I'm not talking about going out to settle things with your hands and throw hands. That's not what I'm talking about. When you know your worth and you know your value, you don't stand around and let people just talk to you in any kind of way. You just move on. You separate yourself from the mess and all the garbage and the muck that you would have to deal with. Now there's certain times that you're not going to be able to do that, where you may have to stand. And when you stand, you have to make sure that you're standing in righteousness, having your loins girt about with truth, right? Okay. So when last we spoke, last week, we were talking about verse 18, where Paul says to flee fornication. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body, but he that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body. Evade it, elude it, run from it, get away from it, escape it, metaphorically speaking. Really just means to avoid, to shun. Don't have anything to do with it. But I want to come back to it. I was going to go to verse 19, but I want to come back to this concept because I don't believe I was clear enough in the position that I took on the matter, on the subject. Because I want to give a much better understanding of what I'm talking about when I say to flee fornication, and what I mean by fornication. All right? Paul, as he's talking to the Corinthian church, if I was to sum that whole chapter up, Paul is attacking their philosophy for life. That's what Paul is attacking. He's addressing their philosophy of life. That word, when you break it down, is affection for wisdom. Their wisdom for their life is what he's trying to address, and how they go about living their life. And I think overall, if a man or woman is to change how they live their life, they have to do the same thing. They have to address and attack their ideology for how they view life and how they should live their life, their standard or lack thereof, their moral compass. Everything needs to be attacked and addressed if you are to change your life for the better. And it has to be a constant addressing. You have to be cognitive of your behavior, of your conduct. All right? So, marriage and fornication, you know what? I knew I forgot something. Hold on. Marriage and fornication, they are, to some degree, interrelated subjects. They're to some degree intrinsically linked with one another. All right? So when I'm talking about fornication, when I'm expounding about fornication, and when I'm doing a tutorial on this, itching. When I'm talking about fornication, I'm not up here to give some dissertation about what constitutes marriage or when marriage is established. That's not what I'm talking about. All right. However, with that being said, in some of my studies, I haven't thoroughly studied the subject, but marriage is an outward expression of the communion that exists between a man and a woman. In fact, in Kittle's Dictionary of the New Testament, I believe it's a 12-volume set, I can't remember offhand, but it's a great read, gives great insight, and gives great information and knowledge about subject matter, about biblical subject matter. All right, so it's a really nice reference encyclopedia that one could purchase and use to help them in their studies. All right, but he said copulation without communion let's put this up here. Kittle's Dictionary of the New Testament. He said copulation without communion is fornication. If you're having sex without having communion, without a real, legitimate, sincere connection, then he says that's fornication. When you have a heterosexual monogamous relationship, the expression of that union and the cost of that union is the marriage. It's the formal ritual. However, again, I'm not up here giving some dissertation about when marriage is established. I'm not talking about what constitutes a marriage or at what point it becomes a marriage. I don't know. I'm not talking about common law marriage versus the formal ritual marriage. What I'm addressing is, and what I'm attacking is, and what I'm talking about is fornication as Paul was expressing, as the Spirit of truth was laying it out for us to understand as he was talking to the Corinthian church. When I say, or when I'm talking about fornication, I'm not talking about a monogamous heterosexual relationship that has not engaged or entered into a matrimonial or formal ritual of marriage. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about shacking up. I'm not talking about that when I say fornication. All right? I'm not talking about that at all. I'm not discussing what constitutes a marriage again. What I'm saying is those that are committing fornication or pornea, those that are involved in solicitous or illicit sexual affairs, solicitous is either one, are those that are going outside of their monogamous heterosexual relationship, and they are sinning against themselves, which they're sinning into themselves, which makes it against themselves. All right, and they're using their body as the weapon of choice. When I'm talking about fornication, I'm talking about people that, whether men or women, have no desire to actually have a one-on-one relationship. I'm talking about those that are engaged with multiple partners. I'm talking about what a term that probably started years ago called free love. exactly what it sounds like. The sexual preference to love however you like to love, without any interference from state. That's what the whole movement was about, to be able to love in any fashion you'd like. Pedophilia, sexual immorality, homosexuality, pederasty, whatever you may have, whatever have you. All right. So that's what free love is. That's what Paul is attacking. Remember, go back earlier into the passage, into that chapter, and Paul says that all things are lawful to him, but all things are not expedient. Right? When he first starts talking about fornication, when he first starts addressing it, when he says that the stomach was for meats and the meats was for stomach, both shall be destroyed, but the body is not for fornication. Remember that some of the Greek philosophy was to be able to express yourself sexually however you will. Acro-Corinth, that I spoke about a few videos ago, where they had a place at the pinnacle of Corinth that these seamen would come in from all over ports to go and engage themselves and get involved with the 1,000 prostitutes that they had up there, men, boys, women, that they had sexual freedom to express themselves however they will. And Paul was attacking that. He was like, nah, you can't, look, you can, just because you can think and you move and you can have being and you're physically capable of willing your body whatever direction you want, does not mean that you should. Same thing goes right now for the church. And it really goes for anybody, but I'm specifically talking to the church because that's the only group of people that can actually hear me. All right. Free love. He's addressing the idea that you can sexually get involved with whoever you want. All right. There's no cost involved in this. Say you're just going about having sex with whoever you like. That's what Paul is addressing. That's what he's attacking in this chapter. And as it pertains to the church, that's what we have to realize. Now, when I say again, when I'm talking about a monogamous relationship, I'm not saying that you necessarily continue to have this relationship without marriage, without thoroughly studying it in depth. I would say that the pinnacle of a relationship is marriage, and that should happen. But in this particular passage, in this particular chapter, Paul is talking about the idea of free license to use your body however you want. The church is not allowed to use their body however they want, because your body, you're a steward over your body, and it necessarily does not belong to you. You've been given something to keep it and to cherish it, to properly use it. And remember, when I said last week, whenever you're using your body, whenever you're committing fornication, you're going outside your relationship, or whenever you're just running around having sex with every Tom, Dick, and Harry, as the phrase would go, what are you doing? Well, you're going against the natural and spiritual law that's been set up by God, the law of nature and his spiritual law. You're corrupting both within you. Again, it's like having a house. It's like building a house. You got the house that you're putting down brick. You're laying brick upon brick. You're putting down drywall. You're laying the cement. You're putting in pipes. And then inexplicably, you just say, you know what, I'm going to go over this side. I'm going to set it on fire. You set the house on fire on that side, and then you come right back over to the other side of the house and start building. Working against yourself. Because that's exactly what you're doing. Burning this house, this temple, from the inside out. I'm not up here standing up here being holier than thou, because it's not like I didn't commit fornication when I was younger. But it doesn't matter. What matters is what is right, what is wrong. And even when I did do that when I was younger, I knew it was wrong. I did whatever I wanted to do, to my own detriment. If you're going in the wrong direction to a buddy's house, are you going to continue going in that direction when you've gotten a new revelation that you're going in the wrong direction? Of course not. No, you're going the wrong way. You need to turn around and go back down 18th Street. Oh, okay, my bad. It's the same way in life. If you're going down the wrong way in life, turn and go the right way. What's the problem? Well, most people don't know the right way in life. They're winging it. They're doing whatever they think is right. They've set the standard for themselves, which really isn't a standard. All right? But when a person is committing fornication, it's the same as taking a product that you've gotten and you're not paying any attention to the instructions. You leave the instructions in the box and you just go put it together and go use it. Right? You're using the product differently than how the manufacturer licensed and sanctioned for it to be used. In this case, when you're fornicating, you're using the body differently than how the Bible, or how God in his scriptures expressed for it to be used, sanctioned for it to be used, licensed for it to be used. Every manufacturer stands by their product once it's passed its inspections, right? But they only stand by the product if it's used according to the manufacturer's prescribed usage. Heck, most men take, you go buy something, you get it home, you look at it, you say, oh, I can put it together. You throw the instructions off to the side. Just start putting it together. And you got it looking exactly how it looks on the box, except you got some of the screws still in the box. There's a couple of pieces that you didn't put, that didn't fit in right because of the way you put it together. Once you start using it, it doesn't quite function the way it's supposed to. That's exactly what happens when you're using God's body, the body that God has given you, because you didn't give yourself the body. Everyone watching this video, realize you didn't give yourself your body. You didn't give yourself your eyes, your mouth, your arms, your hands, your feet, your legs. You didn't develop that. That came from your parent. Guess what? The parent didn't develop theirs either. Food for thought. So let's not take the product that's been given us. Let's not take God's product and use it differently than how the manufacturer is prescribing for it to be used. How he's licensed for it to be used. The body is not for fornication. The body is for the Lord, and the Lord is for the body. That means that the Lord gets the say-so over how the body is to be used. This is for the church. It's not for everybody that's in the whole world. All have not faith. If you do not have faith, you cannot hear. You can't hear this message. You're not even going to have a desire to listen to it. You can go about your day. I know, that same thing happened to me. When I was younger, a couple of people tried to preach to me. I wasn't trying to hear none of that. I was telling people, heck, I'm living like Babylon over here. But through the grace and mercy of God and his miraculous power within me, it changed me from the inside out. Caused me to walk anew. I'm crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life which I used to live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God who raised me and gave himself for me. That's how I live right now. Still walk, I've been apprehended for. That's what Paul said in Philippians. I think it's 2nd or 3rd chapter. So, our bodies is not for fornication, all right? But also, fornication, when I say fornication, I'm not talking about shacking up. I'm not talking about a couple that has been with each other and they're loyal to each other and they have the perfect expression of communion within their lives, but just have not married. I'm not talking about that couple either. I'm not saying that they should per se live like that without getting married. Marriage is a contract that obligates one to the other. If you're in a relationship and one of you want to be married and the other one doesn't, probably means that there's some sort of reservation there. There's a reservation there, you're just fornicating. Because the contract obligates each other. It stipulates that you will love one another and you will stay committed to the relationship. Most marriages end because they really weren't committed to the relationship. They had a reservation. I reserve the right to bounce. Like you go in with 1 foot out. When that sort of relationship, you put 1 foot out right there and you're turned this way like you about to start off on a 40-yard dash, just in case you say one thing sideways, I'm out of here. Oh, you don't like cooking? I'm bouncing. You don't want to make love to me the way you should? That's fine. I'll go find someone else that would. The whole side chick, side man movement, fornication. Now hey, listen. If you just so happen to be watching this program and you're on the fence about believing, or you just so happen to catch this program, hey, listen, if you're not a believer, I'm not really talking to you. But if you believe in God and you believe that He has direction over your life and you believe that He is Lord over your life, then this message is for you. All right. So let's not take God's product and use it the same way that you would as if you bought some Hasbro game, or if you bought some table from the store and you decided to just put it together yourself and leave the instructions in there. Let's not do that. Let's pick up the instruction book and read it so we can properly use the product the way that it's supposed to. This is the licensure book. This is the manufacturer's instructions to show us how to use the product. And that some of that starts when you know the value, your value and your worth, when you identify who you are. If you are a believer and you are in the church of God, if you've been called out of darkness into His marvelous light, then that's your identity. You are the church. You are unique. You are a peculiar people. We are priests and kings unto Him that is called the Most High. So I wanted to come back, look at that, so I can expressly declare my position on fornication, on the understanding of that chapter, of that passage. Wasn't a memorandum on marriage. Again, it's something I'm going to dig a little bit more into. But thank you guys for joining me. Please be safe out there as you go about your everyday affairs. Please pay attention to your children. Please instruct them. Instruct them in righteousness. Keep them from the evil with your instructions. Share with them the wisdom that only comes from God. Thank you guys for joining me, and have a blessed day.